Russia and Ukraine. These two countries have a long and storied past, but since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, the two countries have been in a state of war. As Ukraine moves closer and closer to joining NATO, Russia grows more and more anxious about growing Western influence in Eastern Europe, which used to be firmly under Moscow's control. What's happened between the two countries in the past to cause so much tension now? Russia and Ukraine, along with Belarus, claim that their origins are in the Kievan Rus, which was a kingdom from 879 to 1240. The Kievan Rus, though, wasn't just made of Ukrainians and Russians, who are mostly Eastern Slavs. It included Finns, Slavs, and people from the Baltic area. In the 1230s, the Mongols started to invade Russia, and in 1240, the Kievan Rus collapsed. In the eastern areas where the Kievan Rus used to exist, the Grand Duchy of Moscow came into power, which eventually formed the basis of what would later become the Russian Empire. The western part of the Kievan Rus, where people from what we would now call Ukraine lived, came under the rule of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Over the course of the 17th century, the Russian Empire started to take bits and pieces of what we now call Ukraine. By the time the 1800s came up, all of modern-day Ukraine was under the control of the Russian Empire. In 1804, the Russian Empire banned the teaching of Ukrainian in schools, and in 1876, most Ukrainian books were banned as well. Ukraine remained a part of the Russian Empire until World War I. Near the end of World War I, the socialist Bolsheviks seized power in the October Revolution, but they didn't instantly gain control over the entire country. Some forces remained loyal to the Tsar of the Russian Empire, and Lenin, the leader of the Bolsheviks, had to deal with a civil war in Russia. Since he couldn't focus on both the Civil War and the fight against the Germans in World War I, he signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk that withdrew Russia from the war. This treaty ceded huge amounts of land to Germany. In fact, almost all of Ukraine was now under German occupation. After Germany lost the war, Ukraine was returned to the control of the Russians, and in 1922, it was one of the founding republics of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. This is where things start to go bad for the Ukrainians. See, while on one hand the Ukrainian language wasn't banned anymore, on the other was the fact that the Soviet Union wasn't really the best place to be. From 1932 to 1933, the Soviet Union caused a man-made famine that, according to a UN report, killed anywhere from 7 to 10 million people. Peasants would literally starve in the streets, and many resorted to cannibalism for food. Some say that this was a man-made famine caused by Stalin's industrialization of Russia. Others, that Stalin intentionally let the Ukrainians starve in order to eliminate any possible resistance. Several countries, including the United States, recognized this as a genocide. During World War II, Ukraine was heavily damaged by the intense fighting that took place there. After that, from 1945 to 1991, until the Soviet Union fell, Ukraine was firmly under the thumb of the Soviet Union. After Ukraine gained independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, it suddenly found itself with the world's third largest nuclear stockpile. How did this happen? Well, Ukraine was the Soviet Union's third biggest republic, so naturally the Soviet armed forces kept equipment there. And that equipment included nuclear weapons. Ukraine couldn't operate these weapons though, since the nukes depended on Russian permissive action links. A permission access link, or PAL, is a security measure to prevent anyone from stealing a missile and launching it. By 1996, all nuclear weapons in Ukraine were returned to Russia. An issue that popped up between the two countries pretty early on was the status of Crimea. After Ukraine gained independence, Russia didn't have a centrally placed port in Europe. Russia wanted Crimea so they could have a place for their Black Sea Fleet, a part of their navy that was based in the, you guessed it, Black Sea. Russia was further alarmed by the fact that Ukraine wanted to join NATO. If they did, then Russia probably wouldn't get access to the ports in Crimea. In response, the Russian parliament declared that Ukraine's sovereignty over Crimea was illegitimate since it was a gift from Russia in 1954. The parliament said that Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union back then, didn't have the authority to give Crimea away in the first place, and that the territory has been Russian all this time. In 1997, the issue was resolved with the partition treaty on the status and conditions of the Black Sea Fleet. This let Russia lease naval bases in Sevastopol, a city in the Crimean Peninsula, until 2017. Throughout the early 2000s, there were several gas disputes between the two countries, and Viktor Yushchenko, the president of Ukraine elected in 2005, wanted Ukraine to join NATO, which caused further tensions with Russia. Additionally, Ukraine also expressed sentiments that were pro-EU and anti-Russia, and there were still plenty of tensions regarding the Russian lease on Crimean bases. In 2010, however, Viktor YANUKOVYCH was elected the president of Ukraine, and he was an extremely pro-Russian president. He was also a member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union from 1980 until the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Under his presidency, relations between Ukraine and Russia improved significantly, but in 2013, Russia started an embargo on all Ukrainian goods, hoping to prevent Ukraine from signing a trade agreement with the EU. This worked, and Ukraine abandoned the association agreement they were supposed to sign with the EU. However, most Ukrainians weren't happy about this. A wave of national unrest came about in Ukraine called the Euromaidan movement. This movement tried to get Ukraine to pursue closer ties with the West, but this alienated certain people who wanted closer ties with Russia. The Revolution of Dignity in February of 2014, related to the Euromaidan movement, ousted Yanukovych from the Ukrainian presidency, and the next elected president was Petro Poroshenko. He signed the association agreement with the EU that Yanukovych didn't, but he was only elected president in June of 2014. What happened between February and June? Near the end of February to the end of March, just after Yanukovych was ousted, Russian forces occupied and annexed Crimea, the peninsula that they leased naval bases on. Russia was condemned by various countries across the world, and this strained relations between Russia and Ukraine to the breaking point. Ukraine withdrew their ambassador to Russia, and the two countries have been in a formal state of war since then. This is where the video will stop. The rest is relatively recent. It's the stuff that you've heard about in the news. The main reason for the tension between the two countries is that Russia views Ukraine as part of them and as part of the Eastern European community. Ukrainians don't view it that way. They want to join NATO and pursue closer ties with the West. It's this part that has been the source of so much tension between the two countries. So, that's a history of Russo-Ukrainian relations. If you liked the video, then be sure to press the like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching Explained. New videos every other Friday.